One of the other things that this kind of made me think of, and it's something I definitely went through, a transition that I went through myself, is if you find that weightlifting, bodybuilding, powerlifting, if you find that you're passionate about that and you have that in you, like we're talking about, like it is not, it's not hard to do. You look forward to doing it and you want to do it every day, every day, every day until you're 6 feet under, like Brad said. I used to feel almost ashamed of that, like I was too obsessed, or I was because there weren't other people around me doing the same things. I used to feel very I guess ashamed, and I used to hide it and not want to show people that I was into this type of thing. And then if you think about it, kind of like I said with the Harley Davidson guy, these same things exist in different ways everywhere. It's human nature. My father has shot archery since he was 5 years old, and I've shot archery since I was 3 years old. I love shooting the bow and arrow, don't get me wrong. My father, that's his thing. Like, he gets the same thrill out of shooting the bow and arrow. He can go talk to other people that like shooting the bow and arrow and hunting. He can talk to them for hours, and the conversation just goes on and on and on, just like when we talk about bodybuilding. But for other people, the conversation has to stop at some point. Like, yeah, you lost me. Like, this is not my thing anymore. But they shouldn't feel shameful about that. It's just their thing. Like, are they obsessed with hunting and archery? I don't know, maybe, but I think they're just passionate about it. It could be golf, right? People can talk about golf forever. And Brad, you mentioned football. We all know, like, those guys at the Super Bowl party that just know every stat of every player for the and the teams for the past 20 years, and they've been to the playoffs 9 times, and this kicker was left-footed and this guy's right. And I'm just like, look, man, like, I played football in high school and I love football, I love watching it, but you lost me. Like, I just don't have that much in me to keep going there. So if anyone is listening and they feel that shame and they feel like they want to kind of hide and not show it, like, show your true colors. Like, it's all good. Like, this, it exists in other places too. Bodybuilding sometimes has that, like, weird, I guess, view from the outside world, but just own it, man, or girl. If you find that you're passionate about it, just ride with it and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, it's no different than, let's say, someone who just paints this beautiful Picasso, right? And they're like, hey, look at this painting I just did. Like, it's no different. I look at my physique like that. Like, if I've worked on it, like an 8-month prep, I worked on it every single day and I'm about to show it. Yeah, there's a sense of pride there. So yeah, it's no different than someone who's painting or doing sewing or any of that stuff. It's all kind of the same deal.
Well, and too, when you talked about Nick, when you talked about, your feeling guilty about being overly dedicated or overly exuberant, I'm sure we all get that, gosh, you must work out 7 days in a week, to do what you do, or how many days a week do you work out, and I'm like, really, I can't tell you, because some days it's 3 and, other days it's 5, and I saw a little thing somewhere on social media where they put down what most people think of consistency, and there was like a 1-month chart and there was little X marks on every single day, and then there was another little thing that popped up and here's what consistency actually looks like, and a little 1-month thing. And it was like all of them were checked off except there was like 6 or 7 that, didn't, and I kind of thought to myself, I'm like, what? I think it's even more than that. I don't know how many days a week I necessarily work out, but I know in 2020, I got 193 training sessions for the entire year. And I know that in 2021, I had 207 training sessions for the entire year.
You counted those?
Oh yeah, you know how I am, Jeff. I'm a data
Hey, that's
geek.
worse than me saying I've been training for 36 years in week number 7. He actually knows the actual number of sessions he's got.
I track all that shit in my spreadsheet, But that, to me, that's consistency, is when you can think more big picture and think outside of a week, a month, a quarter, and you're thinking of years,
That's a good stat. Like you're a numbers guy, Brad, right? So like average out, like if you train for 5 years and you add up all the, like you average the same number of workouts per year, right? Whatever that number is, then you do mine for 35 years. The total number of training sessions, I'm going to like be killing other people, right? With that.
Yeah.
Like, who do you think has more skill? The person that's practiced like for 30 years or the person that's practiced for 5 years? Mm-hmm. So that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, I think it's way premature just to kind of say throughout this 5-year arbitrary window. And I know where it comes from. It comes from like being able to build more muscle. Like, yeah, that's the goal, but man, there's so much more, and you're going to miss out on a lot if you just kind of just call it quits after year 5.
Well, and it goes back to what you talked about earlier with Olympic sprinters. You know, I think that it was, how do you say his name? Usain? Is that how you say it? Bolt?
Usain Bolt.
Usain Bolt.
Yeah.
I remember I watched a documentary on him, and he kind of lost a little bit of his passion and he lost a little bit of his drive. But basically, in the end, he said that he trained for 2 years to pick up like a tenth of a second on his 100 meter sprint or something like that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
You know, and like 2 years of work and some of the stuff that his coaches have him do, you know, it's like my worst nightmare, you know. And I think about you, Jeff, and I think about all of the time and effort that you spend over the course of 3 and 4 years before you make a like you said, a negligible improvement in hardness and in conditioning on the bodybuilding stage, you know. But sure, that's what all the people see. They see that negligible improvement, or you're a little bit harder at the same body weight, or they see, you know, Usain Bolt has knocked a tenth of a second or a hundredth of a second off of his time, right? They don't see the 2 years that he spent. They don't see what Jeff had to do. And to them, it's almost like this block that they don't want to do that. You know what I mean? That's too much work and it's not worth it. But what they don't know is what we've been talking about. All of the extraneous stuff that happens during those 2 years. And yeah, it was hard freaking work. And I threw my back out 3 times and I tore my elbows shoveling the snow, and Jeff injured his pec, and, you know, Nick's daughter was hanging off of one side of the bar. That's all really great stuff that happens in that 2 years that helps you grow.
That's what it takes, though, to get elite, right?
Exactly.
That's what it takes to actually put yourself, whether you get elite or you make self-improvement, you have to do that in order to make it happen. And to just
and all that stuff is worth it.
And just to have an arbitrary window and say, well, it's not worth it after X amount of time. Like, he wouldn't have got the world record, right? In the 100 meters, if he didn't put the work in. I wouldn't have got top 5 at Worlds in 2014 if I didn't do what I did. And when you go to, that's what I'm talking about earlier, like when you go to, like, let's say WNBF Worlds, and, you know, Alberto's video was a great example of that. When you're there in person and you're seeing the caliber of athletes there, it's amazing. Yeah, they're not mass monsters, they're not freaks, but they're freaky in their own way. Like the conditioning, the symmetry, it's awesome to see. And just to know, like, hey, I'm a part of that, or hey, I can be a part of that if I put the work in and gain that tenth of a second. You have to be willing to go there and put the time in. And it's like with any craft you do, and it doesn't have to be sports either. You know, you can look at any skilled trade, you have to put the work in, you have to put the practice in to acquire that skill and to be a master at your craft. So I think people sometimes are just like, just basically it's like, do less talking, commit more, and put more work in and put the time in. And then after you put your 10 years, your 15, 20, 30 years in, then have the conversation again.
Well, and just remember,
that was a little hard, wasn't it? Was it hard on people? Was that a little hard?
Well, here, I'll soften it up a little bit. Just think about all of the good stuff that happened and how great all that was while you were putting that work in, and everything that you learned while you were, you know, putting all that work in for that little bit of self-improvement. All that stuff is worth it. You know, all that, you know, that's a memory that Nick's going to have for a long time, you know, and to me, that's a memory that's going to stick out in my mind for a long time. You know, that's all great stuff. That is all great stuff that you're going to miss out on, you know, if you don't stick with your passion and look for those little wins in between, you know, and you know, I always like to use this crystal ball analogy. I remember when I was younger and I was very competitive as a bodybuilder, I was like, man, I cannot wait until I am 40 years old and competing in bodybuilding. Because in my mind, the gains that I had over these, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it was, is just going to keep manifesting itself in the same ratio of kind of gains to years or gains to time. You know what I mean? And that was my thinking back then. But that kept me motivated. That kept me going, is that I got to keep putting in the work now because, I can't wait to see what I'm going to be doing when I'm 40. Well, obviously I learned the hard way, that there's this diminishing returns thing and your body is this incredible adaptive machine. But, what I did pick up a lot is the stuff that I didn't know about, all the different training types and styles and all of the variables that goes along with that and the people that were kind of along the way. And so now I kind of have this awareness that's a little bit different. It's kind of like, I can't wait to be doing this when I'm 60. And it's not because I'm going to be stronger and it's not because I'm going to be more jacked. It's going to be all this stuff that I'm going to learn and all the people that I'm going to meet and everybody that I'm going to be able to coach and help and, get them kind of to learn this thing that I learned last month, or this thing that I learned from Eric, 2 months ago, or, this thing that I picked up from Jeff watching his training videos and things like that. That's what I can't wait for now, is all of that intangible, like non-muscular, non-strength building stuff that's going to go along with it. And that's kind of what keeps me in the game. I'm still learning a lot of stuff all the time, it seems like. And a lot of times it's like, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but it's like, oh, this light bulb turned on. It was like Eric told me something 5 years ago and I didn't really understand it back then. And yeah, when we were meeting, I was nodding my head and I'm like going, okay, yeah, okay. And then all of a sudden this light bulb turns on and I get it. And it's like, I can't wait to share this shit with somebody, or I can't wait until I experience this type of athlete or this type of personality when I'll get to use this thing that I just learned or this thing that just all of a sudden this light bulb turned on, and that's kind of the thing that I look forward to now, similar to, but unlike the person that couldn't wait until he was this jacked 205-pound mass monster, when he was 40 years old, that I was certain that I was going to be, that kept me motivated then. Now it's kind of a similar but different circumstance,
I remember when I was when I first met you guys, and I was like, I remember talking, I think you might have been there, Brad, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember it might have been at Eric's house. I was saying like, I just won the pro cards, right? And I'm like, I'm 38, I've been training for 20 some odd years. I go, I can't gain no more muscle, I'm not gonna make no more improvements. And I was kind of like, like a little negative about it. And I remember Alberto going, what are you talking about? Like, you're going to make a lot more gain. What do you mean? You're just starting, basically. And, long story short, 2 years later, I'm on stage 10 pounds heavier and doing pretty well at pro shows, made a lot of improvements. And it wasn't that I gained 10 pounds of muscle, is like I said earlier, just learning how to diet better, learning more skills. And I learned so much about like trying to contest prep with family and all that, because it took me a good 2-3 rodeos to figure things out. So there was a lot of improvements from year 38 to year 50, that if I would have just stayed pessimistic and kind of just gave up on myself and just said, you know what, I'm just going to be 160 pounds forever, then that's what I would have had. I would have been 160 pounds forever, not because I couldn't, just because I wasn't going to try. So you have to put that work in and you have to go get it. And that's something I learned from Alberto. It's like, Jeff, and still now, even with my check-ins, it's in so many words like, come on, we got to work.
I can almost see his little Bert there. He's just looking at you going, what are you talking about?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to be a little harsh. I think we're coming closer to the end of this. I'm assuming I'm going to be a little hard on people. Like if you're in year 5 and you're a little pessimistic, just keep going and keep putting the work in, and don't be a little, and I'll leave it at that.